Right now at 5, a Rockford man's behind bars after police say they found 2 pounds of marijuana in his car. An officer was injured while arresting the suspect.
Plus, tax season starts today. The new ways Illinois residents can report earnings to the IRS.
And a long-standing Rockford building may be getting some updates, the much-needed renovations for the former Chick Hotel.
Live from WTVO 17. This is Eyewitness News at 5.
Good evening, I'm Mimi Murphy.
And I'm Wendell Edwards. We thank you for being here. Tonight, Rockford police arrest a man they say possessed over 2 pounds of marijuana.
Rockford police arrested 30-year-old Eric Henderson on Friday. Scope officers reportedly found drugs in Henderson's car. He was pulled over in the Rolling Green neighborhood after 11 p.m. Police say Henderson was taken into custody after a struggle where one officer suffered minor injuries. Henderson faces 4 charges, including resisting arrest and possession with intent to deliver cannabis.
Rockford police also announced the arrest of 2 teenagers over the weekend. Around 9:40 Sunday night, police responded to shots fired near North Avon Street, near the intersection with School Street. Officers say they observed a suspicious vehicle leave the area. Police attempted to conduct a traffic stop before the 2 teenagers exited the car and attempted to run away into a nearby home. Both suspects were arrested by police, who recovered a handgun with an extended magazine, as well as a rifle with a sawed-off barrel. The 2 teenagers are charged with 2 counts of unlawful possession of a weapon. One is charged with reckless discharge.
A woman is dead following a fatal hit-and-run in Rockford over the weekend. Police say they responded to North Springfield and West State shortly before 7 p.m. Saturday. They discovered a 56-year-old woman lying in a ditch, severely injured. She was taken to a local hospital where she died from her injuries. The investigation is still ongoing, and we'll keep you updated on any details once they come out.
One historic building in downtown Rockford may be getting some much-needed upgrades. The Chick House Hotel on South Main and Elm has been dormant since 1951. A lot of history here. The city of Rockford purchased the building in 2004. Redevelopment plans stall because the property line splits down the middle of the building. That means both sides must be purchased to redevelop it. Urban Equity Properties has started that process by purchasing the north portion of the building in December. Now it's hoping to purchase the south side to create luxury apartments at the former hotel.
Redeveloping the property, it'll end up with 18 luxury apartments on the upper floors, maybe a couple on the ground floor as well in the rear of the building, just so we have ADA compliant units. And then we'll have several retail restaurant spaces on the ground floor as well.
Rockford's Finance Committee will vote on the sale of the south side of the building at tonight's meeting. We'll update you on the decision coming up tonight at 9.
Gas prices are up again in Rockford this week. According to Gas Buddy, the average cost of gas in the city is $3.21 a gallon. That's 3 cents higher than last week and 12 cents higher than last month. The national average, however, dropped down to $3.08. You can find a map of most stations in our area and their prices on our website, mystateline.com. On Capitol Hill, some of President Trump's cabinet picks face tough tests this week.
Blake Berman breaks down the hearings to keep an eye on this week in tonight's Political Minute.
The cabinet confirmations continue. I'm Blake Berman, host of The Hill on News Nation. Senators on Capitol Hill this week are gearing up for yet another round of confirmation hearings that will determine the fate of some of President Trump's cabinet picks. They include Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the selection for Secretary of Health and Human Services, Tulsi Gabbard, the president's choice to be the Director of National Intelligence, and Kash Patel for FBI Director. This comes after a close call on Friday when the Vice President, J.D. Vance, served as the tie-breaking vote to get Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth across the finish line. With a 53-47 majority in the Senate, the president's picks can only afford to lose 3 Republicans if they don't receive any Democratic support. Kennedy, Gabbard, and Patel could very well face tight margins. I'm Blake Berman, and this is the News Nation Political Minute.
Immigration raids are happening across the country, beginning in Chicago over the weekend. About
1,000 arrests have been made nationally since Saturday. A spokesperson for ICE declined to say how many arrests were made in Chicago. President Trump's border czar, Tom Homan, says they are focusing on criminals with arrest warrants and deportation orders, but there are concerns that others could be affected.
We also know that there was an opportunity for collateral captures, and there are some concerns that we may have had a couple of those as well. But that is exactly what I and a number of my colleagues were trying to avoid when we wanted to amend our welcoming city ordinance, our sanctuary laws, to limit the opportunities for collateral captures.
They're going after people who are law-abiding, who are holding down jobs, who have families here, who may have been here for a decade or 2 decades, and they're often our neighbors and our friends. And why are we going after them?
Police did not participate in any of Sunday's raids.
Closing arguments continued again today in the federal corruption trial of former Illinois House Speaker Michael Madigan. Madigan's defense attorneys presented more of their side of the case, pointing the finger at former Alderman Danny Solis. Solis worked as an informant for investigators and made secret recordings of meetings with Madigan. Madigan's lawyers claim the government put Solis up to it after confronting him about his own misdeeds. The jury could begin deliberations as soon as later this week.
Tax season starts today. There are a few changes this year. The IRS will accept and process 2024 income tax returns through April 15th. Now, new available tools and features on the IRS website include online chat bots and voice bots to help filers and those who call in to the IRS for help. The IRS's free direct filing program is also expanding to 24 states. Illinois residents are now eligible for this service. The IRS predicts someone filing an error-free Illinois return electronically should receive a direct deposit refund in about 4 weeks.
As Americans prepare their W-2s, members of Congress are debating the president's proposed tax cuts.
When we come back, we'll break down the plans to extend Trump's 2017 policy.
And tonight at 6, a new Illinois law protects expecting parents. The expansions made to maternity coverage in the state.
Temperatures from 14 degrees this morning all the way up to 45 this afternoon thanks to the strong southwest wind, although it did make it feel a bit cooler out there. We're back into the 40s tomorrow. Just how many warm days we can expect this week coming up in the forecast a little later.
You're watching Eyewitness News, your home team, with Mimi Murphy, Wendell Edwards, Scott Leber, and Chief Meteorologist Candace King.
As we mentioned earlier, tax season begins today, but President Trump says Congress needs to act soon or millions of Americans will see an increase in their taxes.
Vinay Simlot brings us the full story.
Season's approaching and many of you are getting your W-2s. Republican members of Congress warn your paychecks could be smaller by this time next year.
If we do nothing this year, we're going to have $4.5 trillion of expiring tax cuts.
The sweeping tax cuts Congress passed in 2017 are due to expire at the end of this year. President Trump and Senate Majority Leader John Thune made this pledge
to take the Trump tax cuts and make them permanent, and that's exactly what we're doing.
At the top of the Republican agenda is extending that tax relief to help our economy.
Republicans say those tax cuts grew the economy, but the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office predicts extending the tax cuts would add $3.3 trillion to the national debt by 2035.
The tax cuts actually generated more revenue.
Democrats accused Republicans of ignoring the middle class.
So they can provide a massive tax cut to the very rich.
To give tax breaks for the wealthiest Americans.
Before the Trump administration took office, the Treasury Department said the highest earning Americans would see the largest benefit from extending the tax cuts. For the top 0.1%, an average of $314,000 a year. President Trump says he'll likely need votes from Democrats to extend the 2017 cuts. In Washington, I'm Vinay Simlot.
Holocaust survivors are sharing their stories today on the 80th anniversary of the liberation of the Auschwitz death camp.
The Nazi regime murdered more than 1.1 million people, mostly Jews, in the site in German-occupied Poland. World leaders joined some of the few remaining survivors at Auschwitz to commemorate the day Russian troops arrived to liberate the death camp. In New York, the United Nations held its annual Holocaust Memorial Ceremony, where survivors gave testimonials.
I have a message, and that's why I came. I want to tell the world that God has created mankind not to hate, but to love.
Remembrance is not only a moral act. Remembrance is a call to action. To allow the Holocaust to fade from memory would dishonor the past and betray the future.
The UN declared January 27th as the International Holocaust Memorial Day in 2005. Temperatures here in the state line are warmer than they were last week, but with these high winds, it's feeling a lot colder out there.
In fact, when we come back, Chief Meteorologist Candace King will let us know how to expect the rest of this week to end up. Her full forecast is next.
Now, your first warned weather forecast from Chief Meteorologist Candace King.
Well, the wind advisory continues for a portion of the region until 6 o'clock this evening, as our winds earlier today gusting 35, 40, even close to 50 miles per hour. But that wind advisory will subside at 6 o'clock here this evening. Unfortunately, the winds will pick right back up going into the afternoon tomorrow, still from the southwest and still gusting close to 40 miles per hour. So we're not done with the wind yet, unfortunately. Still a 36 mile per hour wind gust in Rockford, 31 in DeKalb, 32 in Janesville, and 30 currently up in Monroe. Notice the wind speeds will come down just a bit, but we are still going to hold on to that breeze. It'll shift from the southwest to the northwest later this evening as kind of this weak cool front comes through. It'll lighten up a little bit during the overnight, but then pick right back up tomorrow, shifting back around to the southwest going into the afternoon. And notice those stronger wind gusts. So again, gusty winds, but temperatures back into the 40s. And very similar to what we had out there today, that wind chill will probably feel a good 10 degrees or so colder than what the actual air temperature reads. We'll maintain that breeze as yet another cold front comes in Tuesday night into Wednesday. Wednesday, we hold on to that northwesterly wind, but as high pressure briefly builds in, by the time we get into Thursday, it will begin to subside, and temperatures on Thursday may actually feel more like the 40s. 42 for weather watcher Terry down in Genoa. No rain today. Southwesterly wind at 24, gusting to 35. Dew point temperature sits at 18. So it has been extremely dry out there for the better part of this afternoon. Now notice our winds for temperatures, I should say. 44. Our current temperature here in Rockford feels like 36, 35. The current wind chill factor there in Freeport, 42. The actual air temperature, same thing in Rochelle, and we're 41 right now out in DeKalb. So with those temperatures still staying on the colder side, we've got some cloud cover that has worked back in, and those clouds, they'll stick with us as we go throughout the better part of this evening. That is tied into an upper level disturbance that'll slowly work through here as we go through this evening, and that's where that wind direction shifts around to the northwest. Notice with that we also have some very light precip showing up, but not a lot of that reaching the ground. You remember Terry's dew point 18, so it's really dry. Dew point temperatures still, even in a couple locations, are still sitting in the single digits. So whatever's trying to fall from the clouds, it's just evaporating. Now as this actual disturbance comes in, you see this black kind of dashed line. That's actually an elongated trough of low pressure. Think of it as a little mini low pressure system kind of moving through. That's where we've got the cloud cover. We might see a sprinkle or a flurry try to develop from that here later this evening, but not expecting anything impactful as we go through the night. Cloud cover will stay with us, and that'll carry over into tomorrow, but we see an increase in sunshine as we go through tomorrow afternoon. And again, that with the southwesterly wind brings us back into the 40s. A few clouds from time to time Tuesday into Wednesday. Wednesday, despite the northwest wind, we're still up close to 40 for the afternoon. Yet it'll feel cooler because of that breeze, but high pressure builds in then by the time we get into Thursday, and that's where we see a return of sunshine before our next system works in, and that one may give us a better chance for a few rain showers there as we head into Friday. So 24, that's where we head for the overnight tonight. Temperature tomorrow up around 47 for the afternoon. We'll maintain those 40s, dropping into the 30s by the weekend.
Thank you, Candace.
Scott's next with sports.
Some former Ice Hogs are getting some valuable playing time with the Black Hogs, but might they return to Rockford before the season is over?
Now sports with sports director Scott Leber.
The Blackhawks are at that midway point of the NHL season, and the picture isn't pretty if you look at their record. They're the second worst record in the NHL. They're 1 point better than the San Jose Sharks. Not much was expected from the Hawks this season, but more wins and more progress was anticipated than what the Blackhawks have produced. GM Kyle Davidson held a midseason State of the Blackhawks press conference today, and he was asked if young guys like Frank Nazar, Colton Dock, and Landon Slaggert are with the Blackhawks to stay, or if they could wind up back with the Ice Hawks.
No, I think there's always a situation where you can see them going back to Rockford because you don't want to put them in a situation where you're just all of a sudden, like, maybe they go through a tough stretch. We've seen it with players in the past, right? Lucas Reichel, is a good example of that.
We'll just let them play, and if they do what they need to do to remain at the NHL level, then they'll stay. But, Rockford's certainly still on the table for all of our young players should they need it.
Davidson says Connor Bedard has taken a nice step in his development. He says Bedard seems to have his swagger back. As for the upcoming trade deadline, Davidson says he'll be listening to offers. The Bulls will have their hands full tonight. The Nuggets will be at the United Center, and they're starting to play like the Nuggets of the last 2 seasons. They won 8 of the last 10 games. Nikola Jokic is averaging a triple-double per game. The Bulls have lost their last 5 home games. Fred VanVleet and the Rockets have a big game tonight. They'll face the Celtics in Boston. The Celtics have the second-best record in the East. The Rockets are coming off back-to-back wins against the team with the best record, the Cavaliers. And the Rockets have the second-best record in the West. They're 32-14. Rockford native Marcus Hill Jr. will be playing in one of the holy grails of college basketball tonight. Hill and the North Carolina State Wolfpack have an ACC game at Duke's Cameron Indoor Stadium. Duke is ranked second in the country with a 17-2 record. Hill is averaging 13 points per game for NC State. The Wolfpack, who are struggling, their record in the ACC is 2-6. That's sports. We'll be right back.
Our First Warn Interactive Radar brought to us by Rockford Glass and More. We've got an increase in cloud cover out there now, and from that, a couple of light radar returns showing up, but very little, if any, of that is actually reaching the ground thanks to the dry air. Now, we might see a sprinkle or a flurry or two here late this evening, just as a little stronger forcing moves in through the evening hours, but otherwise it's cloud cover. 40s next few days.
Thank you, Candace.
And thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you again at 6.